Hi, and welcome to Speaking from the Center, a special Wednesday edition of Speaking from the Center.
Ooh.
Yeah, with our special guest, Christine.
Hi, everybody.
Hooray!
Bam, there we go. So, for all of you who are joining us on the special Wednesday edition of Speaking from the Center, we made it to 20 episodes. Yay!
Yay! Snaps for Speaking from the Center.
Hooray! 20 episodes.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that?
We've been here before.
Mm.
But not like a live streaming video version. So,
No.
yay.
Yeah.
No. But it's a good sign. We started in what, February, January?
I think we started in January.
I think so too, yeah.
Started when it was cold outside.
Because the insurrection happened. Like,
Oh, right.
and then you guys
That was-
started the podcast. You're
Yeah.
like, wow, what a fortuitous timing on your guys' end.
Exactly. I remember that because, the insurrection happened, and then like a few days later, we did our first show.
Well, because it was something, you posted something on Facebook from our long presumed dead Facebook page. If stuff like this had happened 5 years ago, we never would have gone off the air.
Yes, that was Keith.
Oh, was
Ah.
it?
That was the dearly departed Keith.
Let's just call him the departed. I don't like dearly. That implies
All right.
affection.
that is former co-host of the show, Keith. May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace at the casino,
Mm-hmm.
where he goes every Thursday instead of being on this show.
But we lost Keith, but we gained so many new friends.
Yeah, we've had we've been lucky to have an array of friends willing to put up with our crap.
That is true. We do
Yeah.
make them put up with a lot
Just to be on the show.
just to be on the show. I mean, 2 of them pay us $20 a month just to be on the show.
Well, I know Shartan's one of them.
And Jenna,
She's not been on the show yet, though.
she hasn't been on the show yet. We're working on that. She has a conflicting time schedule on Thursday, so maybe Wednesday would be better for her.
I'm looking forward to that, seeing more women on this podcast. Personally.
As am I.
Personally.
So yeah, I mean, we have 2 producers. We have Shartan and Jenna. They do the Patreon, which is down there. All the links are down there, Patreon and Twitch and all that. And we stream on Twitch. We didn't start out doing that, but we do it now.
Are we streaming on Twitch currently?
Yeah, right now.
And we're on the YouTubes, or?
Yeah, we're on the YouTubes and the Twitch and the Facebooks.
Nice.
So we do it all.
Nice.
So let's get to the first news item of the week. I don't know a ton about this, so Nolan, I'm gonna let you talk.
What's it about for our lovely viewers at home?
No, I'm kidding. I was doing the whole I glitched.
He froze. Oh no.
Well, Elsa.
Today marks, I think it's today, or it might have been over the weekend. But it's the centennial of the Tulsa race riot. A rather dark and unpleasant and terrible chapter out of the United States history in the days before memes.
Oh, it's one of those.
Well, it happened in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what it sounds like. It was a race riot. It's probably one of the worst and deadliest race riots in American history. I don't really know. So let's see. What's the basics of it?
So yeah, how did it start?
So,
Was
well, here's the first thing you have to know is that the area of Tulsa had some of the nation's most strict segregation laws, especially when it came to housing and urban development. They had passed a law. They weren't admitted into the Union until 1907, and they had passed a law stating that if 3/4 of a block's population was white, no black person was allowed to live there, and vice versa. No white person was allowed to live in a black neighborhood where more than 3/4 the population was black, which the Supreme Court actually ruled that their housing laws were unconstitutional, and Oklahoma just sort of ignored it. So what that led to was, and I want to say it was possibly before the war. No, I'm sorry. After World War, no, after the Civil War, many African Americans departed the South because of the extreme racial prejudice and violence they were facing in the Deep South and started to move other places. And a number of affluent African Americans had set up in, I think it's called the Greenwood District
yeah.
of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and kind of built their own community there. And in the post-World War I era, many African American service members came home from the war and made their way out to Greenwood. And the place had a boom economically at that time in the immediate aftermath of World War I.
Mm.
And it was a very prosperous neighborhood, even by standards of, Tulsa in general at that time, but in the country as well. It was still a very affluent, very economically prosperous African American community.
Yeah, it was called the Black Wall Street for a reason.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Booker T. Washington and a number of other affluent African Americans in the post-Civil War era who said, we need to buy land and we need to work together to cultivate neighborhoods and businesses and economic ties to create wealth to pass down to future generations. And back at the turn of the 20th century, the way to do that was to own land.
Yeah.
Now, what happened in Tulsa, I feel sort of needs to be framed a little bit in the post-World War I America, because this is during a time we call the Roaring Twenties. America had only been in, like, really just sort of dipped a toe into the dangerous and catastrophic conflict known as World War I. We sent troops. We were only in the war for, I think, less than a year, maybe a year and 3 months. It wasn't a very long time. We had comparatively low casualties, and we bankrolled everybody who won. So we were sitting pretty financially after the war. Not too many people dead, victory under our belts, and the money was rolling. However, it's not that the experience didn't impact America. It was our first time on the global stage, and a lot of people came back from that war with issues. Not only, undiagnosed PTSD, but it had been an exposure to radicalist ideas and whatnot for a lot of them, because in the immediate aftermath of World War I, from 1918 through like the early 1920s, America was shook by a number of very radical sort of things. You had a big push in the labor rights and union movement in America. The what was it called?
I'm sorry to cut you off. How does this can we get closer on how this is affecting Greenwood?
So in 1919 to 1920, there were a number of small-scale wars fought in Western Virginia as coal miners fought for the right to unionize.
Okay.
And a lot of service members got involved. The National Guard got called out. Thugs hired by the coal mining companies fought in basically a several month-long running battle, a number of battles from 1919 to 1920, and where literally it was just workers fighting for their right to unionize, to live and have and a petition for better conditions.
Yeah.
1919 also saw what was known as the Red Summer. It's called that because a lot of people who had gone off to Europe and been exposed to these far left ideas and seen things like the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia came home radicalized and started to commit a series of terrorist attacks across the United States. Veterans associations and memorial events were attacked. A lot of anarchist and communist movements became very violent. It was and that also, for whatever reason, because America's the screwy place that it is, this led to a backlash from a lot of white people in America, and they specifically targeted African Americans, even though the people perpetrating the crimes were overwhelmingly Caucasian. You know, these far left ideologies also preached racial equality and an abolition of segregation and things like that, which is very appealing to African Americans.
Yeah.
But the overwhelming majority of violent left-wing groups in America at that time were predominantly Caucasian. And this caused a bunch of white people in America who heard these talks of desegregating and miscegenation and went, "Not in my America," and they went out and shot up and killed a bunch of African Americans and other minorities. And it's in this time frame that you see the Ku Klux Klan, that had largely been much reduced in influence and power and popularity, make a very strong comeback. And it's under this that we have what took place in Tulsa. So America is kind of a boiling pot at this point. The economy is booming, but people are killing each other in the streets over,
Okay.
politics.
So what happened in Tulsa that led to the events?
So, as I said, Greenwood was very prosperous. And America, again, the Klan was making a comeback. I think Tulsa was one of the first place they had one of their major comebacks. They went from having maybe 300 members in 1919 to having over 7,200 by the summer of 1921. Greenwood was prosperous. Many African Americans were flocking there, but many other people were jealous. Tulsa's economy had kind of been in a slump after the war. And there were many people in the white community in Tulsa who were, envious, jealous. But what really kicked it off was among these heightening tensions across the country, and among this disparity, there was a small incident. A African-American boy, who's about 19 years old, gone into the Drexel building, which was a department store, to use the bathroom. In order to get to the bathroom, since he had to use the colored-only one, he had to get in the elevator and go up to the top floor. The elevator operator was a 17-year-old white girl. They were alone in the elevator, and she screamed. It's really unclear why. The elevators back then were a little rickety. It may have jerked, and she may have lost her footing and fell. He may have lost his footing and fell onto her. But she was seen as shaken, and he was seen running out of the building.
Mm.
Now, he ran because he was a 19-year-old African-American boy living in a deeply segregated and volatile area, and he had been seen around a screaming white girl. That's kind of like a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's horrible, but that's kind of how it was there at the time. And he ran. The police eventually arrested him and picked him up for trumped up charges, potential assault, because he had been seen running from the scene of an incident.
Right.
Yeah, I'm seeing on I'm reading this on Wikipedia as you're talking about it. It said that they use 45 officers to arrest him.
Yeah, well, he had left the Drexel building and ran to his aunt's house, I want to say, in Greenwood. And he had gone there instead of his parents' house because he knew his parents' house was the first place they were going to go look for him. Because he was, again, that was like, they're going to lynch me for this. When the police did arrest him and took him to the jailhouse, a crowd of angry white protesters had gathered, and there was talks about him being lynched by the mob. So the citizens of Greenwood, wanting to prevent this boy from being lynched for doing nothing, walked down to the police station as well and formed a counter mob. Many of them, as I said, were service members from the First World War. A lot of them were armed with rifles left over from the war. I know the police asked one of the guys for his rifle, and he was like, "No, I'm not giving you that." And as the officer at the time said, I think he said something where like they told the mob of African Americans, like, "Hey, we've got this under control. Nobody's going to get lynched. Like, this mob is here, but they're not getting at him. We have the situation under control." And again, nobody's really sure what happens next, but a shot is fired and all hell breaks loose. The deputies open fire. The African-American mob opens fire. The white mob opens fire. 2 African-Americans are left dead. 10 white people are left dead.
And according to Wikipedia, this was in a crowd of approximately 2,000 people.
Yeah, so everybody's a really bad shot.
The guns back then weren't AKs like the AKs we see now.
No, it's true. They were shotguns and bolt actions, but still, come on.
Yeah, it went from a group of like 100 or so white people in the lynch mob, and then it said that 50 to 60 black men armed with rifles and shotguns arrived to form a counter group. And then apparently after the white people saw the black people armed, then 1,000 white people showed up with their own guns. And the crowd just got bigger and bigger and bigger until the shot was fired. And then a quote battle happened.
Well, and the problem is the outcome of that battle is what kind of sparked the wider riots. The 10 white, basically the angry white mob felt as though, it wasn't a fair exchange. 2 dead African Americans and 10 dead white people. They needed to even the scores. It
Right.
really just inflamed tensions. And they sat there, and the media at the time in Tulsa was saying things like, "Oh, this mob of black people killed 10 white people." And it's like, well, yes, you were all armed and they killed 10 and you only killed 2. And that's what this was really about. But it was sort of just the spark thrown on a tinderbox.
And then the National Guard came in.
Almost too late though.
Well, the
Yeah.
National Guard did not come in to quell the white mob. They came in to quell the black mob.
Yeah.
A lot of white people stormed through Greenwood in retaliation to this and shot and lynched African American men and burned down businesses and homes. A lot of them had been deputized by the local police. And there is also the accusation that aircraft were used to drop bombs on Tulsa, on Greenwood, though I've never found anything to substantiate bombs were dropped. Packets of tar were dropped that were lit on fire to cause the neighborhood to burn. Were dropped.
Yeah, it says fire. So it says numerous eyewitnesses described airplanes carrying white assailants who fired rifles and dropped firebombs on buildings, homes, and fleeing families.
Yeah.
They were privately owned aircraft that had been dispatched by the nearby airfield.
Yeah. Again,
So
not
it was
not so much bombs as it was.
it was like mostly like you said, tar and probably a few Molotov cocktails.
Petroleum bombs, yeah.
Yeah.
Things like that were thrown to make the fire worse, to burn down homes.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like at that point, a bomb's a bomb. Your intent is to destroy
Yeah. It said that
property.
there was reported heavy use of nitroglycerin.
Okay, sure. A bunch of white amateurs got nitroglycerin into a plane and flew it up. I just,
Nitroglycerin and turpentine.
you know how unstable that stuff is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you shake it too hard, it'll go off.
It said it was cited by anonymous sources or secondhand accounts, so it's not a confirmed thing, but
Yeah. No, probably flaming bottles of turpentine and gasoline and tar were dropped on people's homes to set them on fire.
Yeah.
Flown by crop dusters.
yeah.
Again, this is a very I mean, I forget what the final casualty counts were, although it was surprisingly not as high as you might think.
So estimates are around 300, but they don't know for sure because they can only find 2 graves. There is somebody, I forget his name, but he's currently looking to see if he can find like where the trench was, because there's rumors that suggest that a big trench was dug out and it was just a mass grave pile. So, but about 300.
I had heard that the commission had said actually it was only about 75. So, I mean, it's one of those things that we may never actually know the answer
Yeah.
to.
But it got destroyed.
Yeah, I mean that was the equivalent of a couple millions of dollars of damage back then. It's even more. Yeah, here we go. The state commission says 39 dead, 26 black and 13 white, but that's the only confirmed.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah, I think
this
they
all took place over a couple of days. This wasn't just like a one-day affair.
Yeah.
Like the standoff at the courthouse lasted most of May 31st in that year, and then the first shots were just after 9 p.m. and then there were gunfights throughout the night into the morning on June 1st, and that's when the fires began.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they said it was something in the neighborhood of $32 million by today's standards for the amount of damage done. If not, and that might actually be that day's money. I'm not 100% sure. It's
Well,
hard to judge for inflation.
yeah.
Here, I'll share a picture.
And even if that was the case, what if the business had built up? You know what I mean? Like, what if it was like the next Walmart would have been there instead of the Walmart that we know
Yeah.
today? You know, what if they, it was, I don't know, like a mom and dad pop shop that expanded, became like a chain store.
Yeah. The potential of loss, the damages lost is very difficult to calculate. Especially for African Americans, because this is one of the most prosperous communities. Yes, 32.65 million in today's dollars, which back then in 1921 was only about 750,000.
And
Tell me. Go ahead.
I was just going to say they still haven't paid reparations. Yeah. For it.
Yeah, I
Go
heard
ahead,
a discussion about that there was a commission that gathered, I forget how much money, but it was like tens of millions of dollars. They built a museum and they funded some things in like honor of what had happened, but no actual money had gone from that commission to families that had gone through it.
Well, there was a big The really remarkable thing about this is how quickly it was forgotten. I mean, up until fairly recently, this event was not common knowledge.
Yeah.
Many people cite the whatchamacallit, that stupid ass TV show,
Which one?
Watchmen,
Watchmen, really?
as being the show that that really brought it back into public consciousness.
Watchmen or
Yeah, there was the Watchmen
movie?
television show. No. They did a series on, I want to say it was Prime,
Okay.
and part of the show's mythology is tied into the Tulsa race riot, and that is the first time a lot of people had heard about this event. Unless you were a real student of history, this was something from America's past. I mean, how often do we really talk about or write about that time period between World War I and World War II, where this stuff was happening in the 20s, in the immediate aftermath, and the Red Summer and the rise of, far left groups and all that stuff?
Oh, we talk
Well,
about it. We talk about prohibition. We talk about flappers. We talk about underground parties, and
I
we
was about
talk
to say
about
the same thing.
the Great Depression, but we don't talk about Black Wall Street and like all the other things you just said.
Yeah. And that's kind of the problem. Like, it just got swept under the rug. And by the time it got back into the public eye, really, if you weren't from Tulsa, you'd never heard of this.
Yeah.
If you weren't somehow historically connected with that area of the country, you just never heard about it. And it's shocking that an event like this, that was so tragic and so devastating to so many people, would just disappear out of the history books and out of the public consciousness. Again, if you weren't there, if you didn't live through it, if you weren't native to the city, you probably had no doubt. And there were probably people living in Tulsa up until fairly recently who also had no idea. I mean, you think about terrible things that happen in Oklahoma, and you're not thinking Tulsa.
Yeah, you think like the Oklahoma City bombing.
You think of
Yeah.
Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing. I mean, that's what I grew up with thinking about Oklahoma. That,
Or,
and the musical.
Or
Just
tornadoes.
living in the tornado belt, like Tornado Alley, like, that's just living in Oklahoma is probably terrifying.
Yeah. No hills for miles.
Yeah. So
I've been to Oklahoma to go to the casino that was there.
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
They don't allow gambling in Texas, so you have to cross into Oklahoma to actually gamble.
Plenty to do in Texas anyway, so that's fine.
And how was it?
It was the biggest casino I'd ever seen. Like,
Wow.
it was so big that like different sections of the casino had different themes. Like there was like an entire section of the casino that was like Roman themed, and there was an entire section of the casino that was like cowboy themed. It was ridiculous.
Have you ever
Like-
been to Vegas?
Not yet.
Okay.
I know that Vegas has lots of stuffs.
I'm just curious, like, for a comparison, because I've been to Vegas, but I've never been to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's bigger than it's for sure bigger than the casinos that are around here.
Yeah.
Well, that's not hard.
Yeah.
Only been to a casino once. I've been to like the gambling section on a cruise ship, but I've only been to one casino.
I've done that. As soon as they get in the international waters, they're like, it's gambling time.
Woo! Anyway, back on the kind of morbid subject matter of the day. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the great forgetting,
Well, America's known for doing that kind of stuff, trying to whitewash history.
Yeah.
How much do you learn about the Chinese Exclusion Acts or the Alien and Sedition Acts, or, I mean, even the Japanese internment camps?
I mean, that's true. I mean, well, the Japanese internment camps I remember like, hearing about. I feel like when I was younger, but the Chinese inclusion acts, I feel I've never heard about them. And we actually had a case of the bubonic plague in San Francisco,
Yeah.
like in 1906, because I forget the details of it, but it just the Chinese people that had migrated there were living in unhealthy conditions, and there was
Yeah. Well, it's because we used them to build the railroad, and then once they were done with that, we were like, okay, time to go back to China.
yeah.
And go figure, they didn't want to. It's interesting too, because as a byproduct of that, I remember having this discussion with someone. For the longest time, when you look at representations of Chinese culture in America, it is overwhelmingly Cantonese in origin. And I was never really able to figure out why until I read about and learned more about the Chinese Exclusion Act, because part of that was the only place Chinese people were allowed to come to America from, because there was only like one boat, and that was out of Guangdong province in South China. So like we not only said like no Chinese can become citizens, we also said, and you can all only come from one part of China.
But I mean, American history is full of terrible things that we did that we want to forget about because it doesn't look good for us.
Well, look at who our parent was. England.
Yeah, we did
that's
not
true.
learn. We learned very acutely what to do from mommy Britain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And-
Super nanny indeed.
Yeah. And look what they do over there now. They just sweep everything under the rug like it's not a big deal. Their emotions, how much trouble they're actually in. Wasn't there a story about a war where like they radioed the general and they're like, "How you doing over there?" And the guy was surrounded. And he's like, "Well, he seemed to be in a bit of a pickle." He said very calmly and Britishly. And they're like, "Oh, he's fine. He's only in a pickle."
Yeah, they asked him. It was during the Korean War, and he was nearly surrounded. And what's the situation? He says, "Well, it's a bit sticky." And they went, "Oh, okay. Well, he's fine. If he was in trouble, he'd say, 'I'm nearly encircled and about to be overrun. Please help,' and not, 'It's a bit sticky.'"
Yeah. No, he'd say,
Also,
"I'm fucked."
but they also, the other thing is like they have all these items in the British Museum, all of which have been stolen from the indigenous places they took them from. And Britain refuses to give any of them back. Well, you weren't using it. Yeah, we were. You just took it. You had guns. We didn't. We'd like it back now. No.
But it looks so pretty in our museum.
Yeah, sorry, we're not done looking at it yet. Wow, if we could get through one episode where we don't wind up blaming and ripping on the English for something, that would be amazing.
Well, they should give us a reason.
Yeah. They should give us a reason. I mean, they just give you more reasons to rip on them.
Yeah.
They left the European Union for no apparent reason. And they're kind of fucked because of it.
It's great. Anyway, let's focus up.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no, I get it. We were talking about something that was not funny.
We got to be funny. Those were the notes that I got from Keith. We got to be funny.
Got to be funny. President Biden went to Tulsa for the centennial.
Yes.
Yep.
Where he said he was probably the first president to do so. At which point the conservative media jumped all over him, saying, "No, Trump went to Oklahoma," but not for the Tulsa race massacre thing, which is what President Biden was commenting on. But, technically he's not. So he lied. So he's a liar. So we can't trust him.
Obama didn't even go there?
No, I don't think it ever came up during the Obama administration either.
Mm,
That's what I mean. This part of history was just like gone.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the anything between World War One and really the Great Depression is just it's prohibition and the mafia, and that's
It's
all you know.
it's the Roaring Twenties and the Great Gatsby. Hooray!
well, and if you think about it, what we were doing before, this was a very dark topic, and then we started talking about England and ripping on them, and the conversation became lighter. America's not good at having hard conversations. I feel Americans in general.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think
that's pretty true.
So
I think-
how do you explain to a bunch of kids, oh, well, because of the systemic racism in 1921 in Tulsa, there was a man was in a compromising situation and ran, and people thought he had hurt the girl that was in the elevator with him, and he was black and she was white, and so it led to the deaths of
dozens of people.
dozens of people, if not hundreds.
I think the issue in America, especially today, is that nobody wants to have an honest, objective, dispassionate discussion about American history, which is what we need to have. You have the far left crying foul and murder for everything that has happened in the last 200 some odd years of America, really decrying and bashing the nation. Not saying America doesn't deserve to be held accountable for what it's done. It absolutely does. But there are some people on the left who are trying to use it to justify all sorts of far-ranging, far left-wing things. And as a reaction to this, the people on the right try to downplay everything rather than acknowledge the horror and tragedy and just awfulness of what occurred in America's past time and again. So it's this wonderfully vicious cycle where nothing ever gets done and nothing moves forward because the lefties want to go and use it to justify bringing full-on, communism into the country or anarcho-syndicalism or some other far left-wing wackadoo idea. America was racist, therefore the workers should control the means of production. And we should, section ourselves off into communes and have local councils of workers.
I was going to say that makes sense.
Right. Well, whereas the right goes, it wasn't that bad. They're blowing it up. No, nothing bad ever happened here. America's the greatest nation. We're way better than these other people. What about this? What about that over there? Yeah, see, that's not as bad as that. So yeah. And it's this back and forth nonsense that gets nothing done.
When you say that, do you mind if I
you go first?
Just real quick. When you say that, it actually reminds me of like my parents. Whenever I go to them and say something like, "Hey, this thing happened," it's like, "Oh, you're crazy." It's like, Mom, like not anytime, but there were times when like I'd confront my mom about maybe some hypocritical thing that she did. You can't do this, and then she would do it, and I'd be like, "Mom, I feel like I'm not getting fair treatment." "Oh, that's crazy. That's ridiculous."
Right.
It's very dismissive.
Yeah. The people on the left want to blame and hold everybody currently in America accountable and wag their finger at them for every bad thing that has ever happened in America's history and use that as justification to completely destroy and burn down. And I apologize for using that lingo, but to wipe away everything that could possibly be connected to America's origins. And the right wants to downplay and act like America is completely blameless and we've never done anything wrong and things aren't as bad as they say and slavery was fun and like all this other awful shit.
I would say that even the left is still using a lot of American exceptionalism. They just use it in a different way. They're like, we're not as racist as we used to be, and we don't do all these terrible things, but America's still the best, guys. We're getting there. And I think one of the things that the left leaves out is that like they're championing causes that they're not they're not trying to solve in the right way.
Mm.
And there's a lot of virtue signaling. There's a lot of
Oh yeah, virtue signaling and tokenism. That's like
yeah.
that's how we do things in America. Oh, look at how diverse we're doing. Yeah, did you really hire these people because you thought they added something to it, or were you just ticking a cultural box?
Exactly. And I think it's an issue where both sides are using American exceptionalism to sort of say, "Oh, America's not that bad." We may have done some bad things in the past. While the right won't acknowledge half of those things, the left will say that, "Oh, this and this is a lot worse," but they're still not. No one's trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
like
I mean,
Nolan said, it's not a dispassionate argument where people are trying to solve things. It's a lot of finger pointing and blaming and
well,
And
because
what
you have
about
to, whataboutism, and how do you get
yeah,
the advantage, and how do you win? How do you say, "Oh, I totally owned you with facts,"
it's about
and, "Oh,
scoring
look
points.
at me take down this guy," and that's what
yeah.
it's about. It's not
Yeah.
about rational, logical, dispassionate discussion to come to a conclusion. It is how do we inflame passions, and how do we get our side to yell louder than the other side?
How do we
So
get more likes and engagement?
yeah,
And
in that
like,
regard, if this wasn't the 100th anniversary of this massacre, would we be talking about it?
no, absolutely not.
No.
If Watchmen hadn't put it in the damn show, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. It would have been a blurb somewhere on the internet, like, "Oh, 100 years ago, this really bad thing happened in Tulsa," and it would have gone away.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not, because our country has become more woke, as the kids say, in the past few years. So maybe it would have come up.
Possible, but I don't
It's
know that we
possible.
would have had presidential attention.
But
That's
even
fair.
Juneteenth, which is coming up on June 19th, that's an only past couple of years really been mainstream
Yeah.
in American
What
culture.
exactly? I'm confused on what the meaning of Juneteenth is.
So Juneteenth is apparently the day that the slaves were actually freed after the end of the Civil War, I believe.
I mean, okay, sure. I don't think that's accurate, but
I don't want to be wrong about it, so hold on.
because the 13th Amendment is what officially ended slavery in the United States. And that was ratified into law on December 6, 1865.
Okay, Juneteenth is also known as Freedom Day and Emancipation Day. It is a holiday celebrating the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the United States, originating in Galveston, Texas, and is now celebrated annually on June 19th throughout the United States.
No. So the Civil War ended in April of 1865.
Yeah, so it's the anniversary of the date
So
of
2
June
months.
19th, 1865 is the announcement of General Order Number 3 by the Union General Gordon Granger proclaiming freedom from slavery in Texas.
Okay.
So all this is because Texas was 2 months behind the rest of the Union Army. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense for Texas.
Right, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the slaves being emancipated.
I think it means, like, at that point all slaves were free, because if they were 2 months behind the South. I mean,
So
if there's somebody who knows better and can shed some light in the comments, please, by all means. But
yeah, I think Texas was the last state to do it, basically.
So either way, again, slavery did not end in this country until December of that year.
Right. June 19th is the signing of the order to free the slaves.
No. In Texas.
In Texas.
Right. So, I mean, don't you see how arbitrary that is, though? Oh, Juneteenth, that's when we got our freedom. Okay, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in, like, May of 1862, 3 years before the damn war even ended. All right. The war ended in April of 1865, and the 13th Amendment that outlawed slavery wasn't ratified until December 6th of 1865. So Juneteenth is like, let's just throw a fucking dart at the wall. Like, sure, whatever, man, cool.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean that's
that is why we don't remember Tulsa, because the actual history is irrelevant.
well, I mean
This is
that's
when the slaves in Texas were freed. Let's make it a national day of why? Why not tie it to something of actual historical significance with
Because-
regards to the emancipation of slavery?
because it caught on in the culture.
And that's why we don't remember Tulsa, because it didn't catch on. You know, Memorial Day is already in the way there.
Yeah.
Who's got time for that?
I mean that's true. All holidays are kind of
Not Martin Luther King. That is a very real federal holiday that thanks and schools closed down for.
I'm just saying, American people are terrible with their history. They always have been. It's one of the reasons I don't like Hamilton. There are a whole bunch of people in this country who are so stupid and so bad at their history that they're going to see that and
Yeah,
go,
if you watch Hamilton, you have to read the biography that the play is based on, because the biography is totally different from the play.
well, also let's not forget the fact that the play, the musical, kind of also completely leaves out the fact that Alexander Hamilton was a slave owner. You know, we'll just gloss over that because Lin-Manuel Miranda can sing so beautifully.
He can.
You know, we'll just completely whitewash all that because of the lovely singing. But that's the problem. That's where Americans get their history from. And they're going to see that. And then later hear that Alexander Hamilton had slaves and go, what? They didn't put that in the musical, though.
Hamilton. All right, so here's some things about Hamilton that people don't realize. He wanted the president to be a monarchy. He wanted it to be passed down from generations. He was so far in debt when he died that his wife had to pay off his debt. He was never rich at any point.
His wife is also the slave owning part of his family that he was put in charge to manage.
Yes. His wife did end up being an abolitionist, though.
Day late and a dollar short. I mean,
yeah. But like, there's a lot
probably
of stuff
right after she used the slave to pay off all her husband's debt.
There's a lot of stuff in there that people don't know about, like Aaron Burr and Hamilton and Jefferson. I think the depiction of Jefferson in the Hamilton musical is a little bit jaded.
Jefferson hated him, and so did
Burr.
no, the other guy, John Adams, also hated him.
Yes, yeah. Burr didn't actually hate Hamilton until Hamilton thwarted his attempt to run for governor of New York.
And fooled around with his wife. That's
Yeah,
the other thing they don't talk about Hamilton much. You know, the colossal womanizer that he was.
Weren't they all womanizers?
Basically, I mean,
I mean George Washington, no, but like,
yeah, George Washington was a fuddy-duddy. He didn't.
And John Adams, nobody was touching that but his wife.
The best part that I read in that biography about Washington was that he didn't have any idea how to be president because he was the first one. So he tried to act like a king. And that's where you get all these like formalities with the presidency.
Yeah.
Is that George Washington was like, I should probably pretend I'm king of America and it'll work out. But he had no idea how much formality he should be in the role of the president.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is
Yeah,
the problem, right?
Just call me the leader of the free world. I think that'll age well with time.
But that is overwhelmingly the problem with Americans. This is where they get their history from.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, sure. We've arbitrarily picked a day, has some historical significance. Cool. nobody's going to remember any of the actual relevant facts about it, and that'll get lost to history. You know,
Yeah.
who has time to remember Tulsa when you got Memorial Day?
Well, I mean,
You know, this
and
is how
that's-
these things slip through the cracks. This is how we forget them.
yeah, and even Memorial Day, like, who understands like the deeper meaning of what Memorial Day is supposed to be?
Yeah.
I mean, for most people, it's just like, you know, a cookout.
3-day weekend cookout.
Yeah.
But that's the problem is when you don't attach anything to it of actual relevancy, nobody's going to remember it.
I think
Or
American,
worse, they'll remember it wrong.
yeah,
And then over time that will become the new history, even though it's inaccurate.
Yeah.
And then we forget more stuff. And some of that stuff might actually be more important.
so go and learn your history. God damn it.
They never will. They're too dumb for that. You
Or
can't make
marry
it.
somebody who knows history. That's the easy way out.
You can't
Yeah.
make it into a cool TikTok or something, so it'll all be forgotten. Don't worry.
Where's that old man yells at cloud meme?
Yeah, seriously. Get a TikTok or a Tumblr page if you want it to people to remember it. Otherwise, no. Old man yells at cloud.
I mean, that's how we sound, but we're just
Yeah.
putting that out there.
So, we should talk. Is there anything else? I'm thinking.
I think that, boy, my brain is scattered today, but I think that we should try and remember more, try and find out the truth behind more things like Tulsa. Like, I'm sure there's more stuff that happened in America that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, there were the West Virginia wars fought around the same time period
Yeah.
between mining workers.
I did see a documentary on that. I had to watch that for one of my classes about how the miners were literally like in battle with
They sent children into battle? The miners?
Yeah.
There were no child labor laws, so yeah, some of them. They are literally called the West Virginia Coal Wars.
What was the documentary called? I had to watch it for my Marxism class because it was about unionizing. But it was horrifying. Like the companies and the managers were not giving the workers an inch until the workers were literally in a standoff with they called them thugs, and the managers, and shootings happened, and
Yeah.
eventually the coal mining companies capitulated, but it wasn't for a long time, and a lot of people died.
Yeah, a lot of the people who were fighting in those mines were, again, ex-service members who had served in World War I. And
Yeah.
it's these little, and now you think about people trying to unionize it, like Amazon and all these other places that are just getting flat out refused to be allowed to do that. When it's like, so the last time we had a massive workforce try to unionize, it led to actual running gun battles through the mountains of West Virginia.
Yep.
So the guys at Amazon got to toughen up a bit and dig their heels in and
Yeah.
be ready for some shit.
I mean, they all
So-
would have to quit at once, and then goodbye Prime, Goodbye 2-day shipping.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to actually go on strike.
Which without a union, they can't do. They'll just all get replaced.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe not in this economy. People are not wanting to go back to work sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And Amazon doesn't pay the best.
no, it does not. No, it does not. I know. I tried to get some jobs there. And eventually went, yeah, no, I'm good on that.
Yeah.
They are terrible. So, Anyway, we should talk about wrap
gonna
things
say,
up and
learn
talk
your
about
history.
learn your history. But me saying that's like an old, broken record. So
I'll say it because I love math, but not history so much. If you learn about like the little stories, you can find some funny things. Like in Australia, they had something called the Emu Wars, where local farmers fought the emus. Guess who won?
The
Emus.
say the emus.
The
Yes.
emus won. Yeah.
yeah, well, the Australian military actually did get involved and they lost.
That is hilarious.
So, look for stories like that because that's funny. But anyway, learn your history.
So wrapping up, we'll talk about the plans for the show going forward.
Oh yeah,
'Cause
we're taking a break.
Taking a break. Probably going to start doing the show on Wednesdays again when we
Yeah,
restart.
Wednesdays at 8 p.m. What are we gonna do? A couple of weeks. So let's see. We'll be back. You want to say we'll be back on the 23rd?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
All right. So
And we're also going to keep the shows a little bit tighter.
yeah, we're gonna try and keep it closer to an hour.
And we're also going to try to, I think it's something that you and I should do, Tim, is we'll come up with we'll brainstorm a bunch of topics in advance and then figure out which ones we want to do at what time.
Yeah.
So we can have a little bit more preparedness because while I love the fact that we do this as more of a conversation than a lecture, I think after the show we did last week, we could do a little bit more. We could do with a tiny bit more structure because we were just sort of rambling and all over the place. And
Yeah.
I remember looking at you at one point and going, "Yeah, we're doing good today."
Yeah, so I don't want to peek too much behind the curtain, but I do try to come up with whoever's going to be on the show and topics by like Mondays, the Monday before the show, but we can be more regimented about that.
I think if we just literally we'll pick from a list and say what week do we want to do this.
Uh-huh.
And then we can kind of do a little bit of advance notice like, hey, here are the topics, who's available when. That'll inform which one of these we want to talk about.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And like, if I don't know what the topic is, I don't want to come on here and, be twiddling my thumbs. I want to be an engaged guest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Part of that is my fault because of the food truck keeps me busy on the weekends. So
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
have time to.
You have a big food truck thing on Thursdays.
I do.
So that's
which is
another
why
reason.
we're switching to Wednesday.
Well, we're switching to Wednesday, so we'll have a little bit more prep time,
And I won't be as exhausted when we do the show.
Yeah, you won't zone out and creepily grin while someone's talking about child trafficking.
Oh God.
Like, don't get me wrong, but I've been there. I have spaced out hard like that in the past, but
yeah, I definitely wasn't all there. It was a hot day, and I was on the grill on the food truck, and I was out of it as soon as we were done. Like I was like dehydrated and exhausted.
yeah.
So now we're gonna do the show on Wednesdays, so I'll be more human.
Awesome.
So let's go through the thing where we talk about our stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll put, there we go. Bam.
Also, on a side note, for those who celebrate, Happy Pride Month. Let's see. So, as you know, I am a voice actor. That is my website. Wrong way, but
I do it all the time too. It's there somewhere.
Inverted. Controls are inverted. There you go.
I don't know how to do it anyway. I think my hand bends that way, but that's my website. If you can listen to my demos, and if you like what you hear, and you own a studio. I can do commercials, and I can help you with whatever you need in regards to voice acting. So that is my plug.
Nolan.
Hello, I am Nolan.
Wait, that's the wrong one. Hold on.
I am
There we
Tim's.
go.
I am Tim's long-suffering co-host for this iteration.
20
Speaking from the
episodes?
center, 20 episodes, and 20 more to come.
And 20 more.
But I also do a podcast called In the Nerd. You can find us on Facebook at In the Nerd, Facebook.com/In the Nerd. You can
Facebook.
find us on Apple Podcast under In the Nerd Podcast. We just had one post recently, I think. I don't know if I'm in that one, but I'm sure it's still quality. And we're going to have a bunch more that we're going to record and start releasing on a more regular schedule. So check us out.
All right.
And my turn. Get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so like we said, we will be back on Wednesday, June 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you like our show, just click on the like buttons and subscribe and give us all the ratings. Go to Patreon. There's Patreon right there. Give us the monies if you really like us, and you too can be a producer like Shartan or Jenna. Follow us on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, and like us on Facebook. And that is all I have to say about that.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's yawn time.
Bedtime.
Bedtimes.
Oh.
Bedtime. All right, so this is Speaking from the Center, signing off until next time, and we'll see you guys later.
All right. Bye. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.